let's see.
What time does the 11:30 meeting start?
Oh. It depends on if it's 11:30 real time or church time. Or wedding time sometimes. No, we're not going to wait that late.
So the first question is this more or less people than you expected?
This is a few less than I anticipated. I expected about 18 maybe at tops. But I do know some they're going to be here on Saturday morning who said they just couldn't make it today. But basically, what this is a conversation. Is if you are feeling, to assess whether you are feeling called to serve on the search committee. I'm not going to go through what the search committee has to do. This is to help you process as to what you're thinking. And so with that, let's open with a word of prayer. Oh God, as we have this conversation this morning, empower our hearts and our thoughts to understand how you are calling us to ministry, even ministry to serve on a search committee. And give to us your blessing and your grace in Christ's name. Amen. So this is basically, and it's up on the screens as well, is basically our time together and what we're going to be looking at. And so, and like I said, part of the process, the goal is for you to assess your commitment level to being involved or feeling called to be a part of a search process. The session has, listening to the voice of the congregation, has begun the process for the senior pastor search committee. Oh, my thing did not come up there. And so, and one of the things I want to let you know, and that's not showing up as largely as I thought it would be, is that the search does not occur quickly. And it is something that it does take time and deliberation to be a part of. And so what this is going to be, the selection process is asking you that if you are still interested at the conclusion of this conversation, to give your name to the nominating committee, and then what they'll do is they will be in contact with you, and that what will occur is that then at the appropriate time, when the slate is filled, the the nominating committee will tell the session that a search committee is ready, and that the session will call a congregational meeting to elect the search committee and get them started in their work. Now, part of the aspect of the overview of the work is I want to ask if any of you have ever served on a previous search process. All right, we got 1, 2. I will tell you that if you have done this before, there pretty much is, it's a new reality now. Since COVID has upended things, we have gone to a lot more technologically oriented meetings. It is still advisable for the search committee to meet in person as much as is possible. But one of the things that you're going to find out is that a lot of your work is going to occur over the internet. It's going to occur online. Part of that is you'll be receiving pastoral information forms, call it resumes, if you will. You know how us Presbyterians are. We create these long acronyms. I think the military learned those things from us, Jack. My apologies, Jack. I think y'all learned it from us. But one of the things is, you'll be doing a lot of interviews online. You'll be reading a lot of sermons, probably online. You'll be watching videos of pastors in their element. And so therefore, it'll kind of give you an idea. But still, you'll need to meet, and generally in person is still best, to process the information with one another. Now, basically, this is the timeline. And it's 6 to 12 months is not unreasonable. But figure if you're getting involved in a search process, it's going to take 12 to 18 months is probably what you ought to be allocating time. This is why we're talking about gathering. And by the way, feel free to interrupt me at any point if you've got any questions, and we'll do some Q&As at the end as well. Basically, for the organizational meeting, when the search process is started. Yes, sir.
You said interrupt.
Yeah.
Okay, now, I think the 12 to 18 months, now, we were talking in the fellowship hall of a situation you were involved in, it took 60 months. That's 5 years. How could it go that long?
The question was, I was the interim at one place for 5 years.
We'd be okay with that.
Okay. Well, thank you. What occurred was, when I came as the interim, the church, for a long story, and was that there was a lot of stuff that the church needed to get involved in and needed to do. There were a lot of dynamics, and part of it was there was part of there had been a lot of strife dynamics between pastor and congregation that had gone back for literally 35 years. There was the person that I was succeeding had not been, I'll just say, not been the most effective person, and had been a little bit disruptive in the life of the congregation. Then, as that settled, we started talking about what are the needs of the physical plant, and what are the needs of the congregation. And then it began. Well, it was an opportunity to sell the property and relocate. And then where do you buy new property? And then how do you go about doing a capital campaign? And then how do you go about starting the building process? And I was there for 5 years doing that. And the church just kept saying, "Oh, there's no need to do a search. There's no need to form a search committee now because all of these dynamics are going on and at play." And so that's how I wound up being at one place at 5 years, and I will tell you, and it's a longer story, but I'll tell you, for the work that they did, I am sinfully proud of them. That church did some wonderful stuff. And then when they broke ground, then it was time for me to leave. It was, I'll say it this way: if I stayed, it's my church. If I go, it's theirs. And long story short, they took out a 30-year mortgage and paid it off 23 years ahead of schedule. The church grew. We did a lot of work in redoing the DNA, if you will, of that church. And like I said, and this is some great stuff that they did. And they did some other stuff, but there was a lot of healing that occurred. And it was not the same church. That's how it was that I was there for 5 years in that location. I know of one church, and that literally, I don't know if I should tell you this, but I'll do it anyway. I know of one church. I did not resource them, but they have they're now have completed 4 years of a search process, and they've just elected their third search committee. Now I'm going to tell you. Now I'm being very pejorative, but I'll tell you this: if Jesus walked in the doors, they'd find something wrong with him. I'm being pejorative, but that's not too far. That's not too far afield.
So the search committee could be impeached. Is that what you're saying?
In this case, they never. All of them just chose to resign. They just said this is just too much work and effort, and they were looking for the perfect pastor, and that's one of the things that occur.
How do we get the candidates? How does the search committee get the candidates? What does the church do to let people know that we're looking and hey, send a resume if you're interested? How does that work?
Tell you what, if you'll let me get there, and I'll answer that question.
Okay.
And so, basically, for the first organizational beginnings, I'll convene the committee. We'll go over the work that lies ahead. One of the first things to do is to elect a chair. Also, you'll want to elect a secretary or two. One of those secretaries could be a communications, who communicates with the candidates and also the congregation, and another one who does a lot of the correspondence. And sometimes it's very helpful to have two persons. And also, and I'll suggest this, whoops, I need to back up. In the last thing, and Mari, I'll make these slides larger where they can be seen a lot better. But the election of a chaplain might be a good thing to do. Somebody who's kind of versed in providing the spiritual overview of what's going on. Now, I've seen that occur in several churches, and what they did was they turned a search committee into doing holy work. Now, part of the preparatory work, and this is, Jack, this is where we're getting into your aspects, is you'll be doing the background work on the strengths and weaknesses of the church. You'll be interviewing congregational members, compiling a mission study, and then you'll be writing the mission information form. Basically, I'll call it the want ad that says we're looking. And then you'll be praying together a lot. Now, this is the point when you submit the mission information form to the denomination. They will send you a batch of resumes, if you will let me just use those terms. And they'll send you a batch, and then you can go through them, and then you can continue going through them and continue going through them until you find a person that you resonate with.
Will the resumes continue to come in once the search is started,
Yeah.
or are we limited to the ones that come in the beginning?
You can actually do that either way. You can say we want to just limit it to, and say and select from those candidates who provide you with their resume. Say if you want to say deadline 60 days from now, you can do that. You might find out that you might find the right person. You might find that you did not find the right person. So I will tell you the fastest I've ever seen a church select a candidate was on the 6th resume that they saw. Wow. And it was just one of those. It was just a great fit. Yes, sir, Bob.
In this day and age, how big is the pool of candidates? How many can we expect to take a look at?
Well, you can probably have, during the course of your search, they're not going to come in all at once. But you can probably, I would expect for a church like this, Don, what do you think? Minimum of 60?
Well, just by comparison, when they look for an associate pastor, interim pastor, the presbytery said, well, you'll be lucky if you can get 3 people because there's more jobs than there
much we can afford to pay the pastor? How does that work?
Well, there are minimums set up by the presbytery, for job offers.
So what about maximums?
Well, that's negotiable.
Yeah. Sky's the limit.
How about the budget?
That's limited. But yeah, one of the things that at some point along the line, and I don't want to, this is starting to get in, I'll get into the weeds just a little bit, is that when you decide the kind of criteria of the person that you're looking for, the session will advise the session as to what you think salary range should be, and the session will also take a look at that and provide you with a salary range. And then also, and the personnel committee. And that, and then also the church will be simultaneously looking at some long-term goals for the church as well. Goals, opportunities, possibilities out there. And so this is several components going on simultaneously.
Will you be guiding the committee throughout this?
I will resource the committee up until the point when the committee says, okay, we're ready to receive resumes. And at that point, and we want to talk about candidates, and at that point, I'm going to step out of the picture. Because, you don't want my influence in that regard. And then when you get into the interviews, I'll help you, I'll help along with the Committee on Ministry, put together some questions that you might want to ask, some things that you might want to think about going forward for the person you want to call, and also what you think the hopes and dreams of how well they will fit in the life of the church. And like I said, in getting into the actual work, you'll be reading a lot of pastor information forms, resumes. You'll be watching and reading sermons. You'll be determining the type of candidate that you want. You'll be crafting interview questions. And here again, you need to be praying a lot together.
If I may.
Sure.
I'm not sure Jack really got an understanding of how these resumes come. We will fill out a 13-page
Question.
document that will be submitted through the UPC USA website. And that's called Church Leadership Connection. And that'll go online. And then the people who are looking for positions will respond to our ad online.
Okay.
And then they will submit also online their vital resumes, whatever they call it.
Vita.
Thing. And then, so, at this point, you can have the benefit of perusing these without ever having face-to-face contact. And then, they do, as you said, come in, and if you don't get enough, you can continue to list your ad again.
When we put out what we're looking for, do we put a salary range in there? And if we offer more, does that mean we get, I know this is church and people aren't in it to make money, but, if there is inflation, people have to live. Is that?
I'm looking at the form right now, and I don't remember whether there's a.
What you'll do is, for online, you'll say, this is, with the denomination, this is the salary range of which we're looking for.
The answer is yes.
And,
Minimum and salary range.
yeah, but what will get posted will be minimum salary. That's the one that'll go out.
Well, there is a position, a place for maximum.
I know, but that doesn't get distributed.
Okay. And they ask questions in here about a manse, housing allowance,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera. this is a fairly it really guides you through this process just to fill out this form. I mean, and on many aspects of this, there's gotta be a lot of discussion with regard to the committee. And just preparation of the form that goes online.
Is it gonna be difficult? Are the committee all gonna have different ideas of what they're looking for? And does the committee have a tough time coming together to make the decision of what of a recommendation?
Initially, yes. Everybody will have, this is who my ideal pastor is. Difficulty coming together, seldom. Now, like when you've got a church that's on its third search committee in its fourth year, already doing that, obviously, yes. But generally, you'll start coming to consensus on this. And this is he keeps anticipating where I'm going next. You know that?
He's a little bit of a planner.
But part of the thing is interview work. You'll decide upon the persons that you want to interview. You'll have interviews over Zoom. You'll narrow down the candidate list, and you'll be checking references and conducting background checks. And at some point, you'll invite the specific candidate that you want to come in and meet with you face to face. And now you may want to, now in years past, everybody went out and visited churches, sometimes all across the country. And that, you can do that if you'd like, but that's just generally not productive anymore. Most of it's done via the internet, which brings the world to your doorstep. I do know of one church. They called a person who was pastoring a church in Scotland, and they did everything online, and they decided that this individual was who they wanted. I know another church who called another pastor from another part of the world as well. And literally, I know of one. This doesn't happen very often, Don. Don's, by the way, served on the Presbyterian Committee on Ministry. This is why he's so knowledgeable. But Don, I do know that there was one church that called a pastor who literally was almost next door. I mean, literally in their backyard. These things can occur.
It's kind of nice because you can listen to the sermons, not just one, but several, because they're online. And that's something you couldn't do when you had personal visits. And I was also very suspicious when 3 people who are strangers to the church all of a sudden show up to listen to a Sunday service, and then that causes a lot of angst in the congregation, like, gee, is my pastor looking for a new job? Yes, and that's why we're here to listen to him. But we don't have to do that anymore.
We can do watch parties.
Yeah, you can do watch parties.
Those movie rooms almost all set up.
Yeah.
Needed abilities. One is we need your willingness to commit for an extended period of time to serve on the committee, a willingness to meet often, and at least some technological abilities. And it's like Byron Johnson said, when he said, do I have to know anything about computers? And I said, yeah. And he said, I'm out. And so, but you at least have some technological abilities. Helpful skill sets to have is at least 1 or 2 people that have some HR backgrounds. Now this is just a David thing here. I think this helps facilitate. 1 or 2 people with HR backgrounds, at least 1 person who is a tech geek, somebody who does understand computers. And because there will always be those little glitches that occur, and at least 1 person who actually likes making phone calls. I mean, not necessarily internet emails, but somebody who actually likes talking on the telephone. you'll find that that's very helpful. And so one of the things that you'll find is, Jack, that you were asking about coming together. Like this commercial, this cartoon says, for the search committee's meeting, it says, basically, we're looking for an innovative pastor with fresh vision who will inspire our church to remain exactly the same. But one of the things, but one of the things is that I'd like to ask you to be thinking along these things, because now we're going to be talking about holy work. And you may ask, what is holy work? Always ask these two questions when you're in the search process, and I'm going to bring this up now. Is one, are you looking to make a hire? Are you willing just to hire somebody? Or are you seeking a mutual call with a person that God desires to empower you and Christ's work in this place? There's a bit of a difference here. And it sets the tone as to what you believe that you're engaging in going forward. And this is where the unanimity of the committee comes in. Exactly. Do we need, what are our needs, and do we need a person for, and sometimes it's fair to say, do we need them for a shorter period of time, or are we looking for a long-term journey together?
What's the right size for the committee?
My bias, about 6 to 7. I've known search committees that were larger, and sometimes, and if you're the interviewee, when you're up around 10, 11, and 12 people, I've seen search committees that large. You feel intimidated, and it becomes, and sometimes, and I'll just say it like this from my observation, I imagine Don would say the same thing. When you're in that large, you kind of wind up getting into a swamp, and everything starts slowing down. And then at the end you say, oh, we got to hurry up and finish this, and so this is what we're going to do. It usually doesn't turn out, well, it often doesn't turn out great. And I'll say it like that. Now, you're getting my biases. PK?
What is the lifetime of a ministry, typical years?
On average in a Presbyterian church, it's about 9 to 10 years. That's average. Some stay longer. Some stay shorter. And I'll just be pejorative here. Some who stay 9 and 10 years, it feels like they've been here 40 or 50. But you get my point. But that's the general average, is about 9 to 10 years.
Is it possible that the search committee finds somebody and they say, I don't think I'm a good fit for your church?
Yeah, that has happened.
After the committee has done the selection, the committee on ministry gets involved and has what they call a fit interview. Somebody outside of your church, from usually the committee, who is familiar with your church but says, do we as impartial observers interview this candidate and say, gee, we think this is a good fit for your church? Great. There have been occasions, however, when the committee has not agreed that this is a good fit for the church.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll come back to the committee and say, we think you guys ought to look a little longer because we don't see a very good fit. And that kind of takes it's a good modifier, and it gives you an objective opinion, and it takes out politics, and it takes out favoritism, and it takes out biases from the search committee, and it kind of settles it in. And don't forget that the Committee on Ministry is already probably familiar with that candidate, because we're going to ask them to do a background check. And many of them have personal experience with these ministries, or they know somebody in the presbyteries that are
And I think I think the most important step is the initial statement of who we are and what we're good at and what we're terrible at. And how much we care about the stuff we're terrible at. Does it have to be improved? Or are we good with saying, this is us, and these other things we need to get partners to help us be good at. But, I think a really big piece of seeking a pastor is really being honest about who we are. And, warts and all, strengths and all. And hopefully, if we do a good job at the initial stage of taking in all of the things that we need, that the folks that we think that we want to have coming here will resonate with the rest of the congregation. If they fail to resonate, then maybe we need to make sure we're looking for the right thing.
Now, I will show you what the ideal pastor is. It's the person who has the strength of Samson, the wisdom of Solomon, the courage of David, the patience of Job, the skill of Luke, the endurance of Moses, and the ability and agility of Zacchaeus. No problem finding this person. And maybe I should, if I'd had some more places, I got a couple of these cartoons and y'all will see them at some point. That, not in today's presentation, but one of them is, it says the ability to walk on water. But like I said, and this is where coming together as a committee is important. Praying together a lot and having these kind of conversations, because this is holy work, and your task and this is what I want y'all to consider. If you're being called to do this, is your task is all about understanding God's mission, your relationship with Christ, and how the Spirit is working, moving right now in the life of this church. And as you do this, this is what you're going to discover. You'll discover a palpable sense of hope. You'll discover a genuine affection for one another, and you'll discover that the holy responsibility of doing God's work together. We use the word community a lot, and this is what you'll discover in this. If you feel that this is what God's calling you to do, and you'll be able to do all of this. Now, I know this is a tall order, but you can do this because you will learn in this process to trust one another, and you will share the load with each other. It's not one person doing it all by his or herself. Things will not magically appear overnight, and things will manifest slowly with God's help. And remember that you are not in this alone, because you've got the Presbytery of Chicago Committee on Ministry and their liaison assisting you with that. You've got people in this church who've served on the Committee on Ministry. I'll be with you in the search process. Like I said, not in the interview portion, but I'll help you at the start and towards the end. And also you'll have plenty of denominational resources and guides available to you. And also one other thing that I did not put up here that I wish that I had, you'll have an entire congregation praying with you and for you in doing this work. Because, like I said, you're all in this together. And so at that point, are there any other questions and answers that you might have at this particular juncture?
Well,
Patrice.
Will each of us be like an interview to see what our level of commitment is and that kind of thing? What else would you just...
In the process, she's asking about the process. Some people will decide that, I just don't have this kind of time, I don't have this kind of interest, or this isn't for me, and that's fine. But if you're still interested, if you'll just let me know, and I don't mean to be the only conduit, but if you'll let me know that you're interested, we'll pass that along to the nominating committee. And then they'll be in conversation with you and asking about your abilities and such and availability. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to get the full spectrum of the congregation to participate in this, so that we understand, so that we can have the totality of the congregation represented. PK.
What is can you explain more about the time commitment?
Sometimes in time, what you'll do is you'll meet initially, generally you'll meet on average about once every 2 to 3 weeks. And then as you're putting together some of the plowing the ground up for to get started. And then when you get ready to do, and you're saying, okay, we've got the mission information form. We're about ready to, quote, advertise for the position through the denomination's website. You can also advertise through the Presbyterian Outlook, the Christian Century, Presbyterians Today, if you want to so choose to do that. There are other venues. And you may want to say, we're going to take a month off. And because then when you get started, then you'll meet about every 2 or 3 weeks on average, and to read resumes as they come in, and then to start saying, this is, we like these, we like what we're seeing, or next, and so on like that. And then when you get down into the final throes, sometimes you'll be meeting once a week. And like I said, that's not a guarantee, but it sometimes occurs. But generally, on average, figure about every 2 to 3 weeks on average. And I'll just say, you might start, I'm picking arbitrarily, say Tuesdays. You start at 7 o'clock, and you're going to go maybe till 8:30. So like I said, I'm just picking that arbitrarily. But basically for about an hour and a half. And now sometimes you won't meet, but you might check in with one another, say Tuesday from 7 to 7:15, just to check in with one another and say, are you reading these resumes? Is this making sense to you? Do you have any questions? And sometimes you won't be present. We had one young lady in one church who was a member of the congregation. She was a student at Arizona State University. The church was in Park Ridge. And so she did a lot of her meeting online with the congregation. And when she was in town, she met together with them in person. Now, she started out, like I said, in person because you need to build that camaraderie and that trust. Had another person who wintered in Florida, and so they were able to remain connected during the process while they were in Florida. Had another person, Charlie, who literally traveled for a logistics company, and sometimes Charlie would log in from Australia. Then the next thing you'd know, he'd be in Spain. And so that's, but that's the possibility. But, and that's, like I said, about every 2 to 3 weeks on average. Sometimes you may want to meet more often than that. Sometimes, like I said, it just depends on the nature of the committee. I know one committee who, I'll just tell this one, they met once a month, and that was all they were planning to meet. Don, their process was slow, but they didn't care.
And you wound up being there 5 years.
No, that wasn't me. That wasn't. I'm sorry, I didn't tell that one right, but no, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. All right. Like I said, I just want to just let you know, if you're interested, this is what you're getting yourselves into. And so when the committee, if you're still interested, when the committee forms, or the search committee is brought forward by the nominating committee for election, then we'll begin the process, and then we'll go into more in-depth training in that. But this is just kind of letting you know, if you're interested, this is what you're getting yourself into. Any other questions? I think I heard Don say, let's adjourn.
If he did, he should.
No, thank you.